The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. Without further ado, we would like now to hand over to the councils for the civil parties to proceed to put questions to this civil party.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, before the break, we were speaking about the boat that you saw, Madam Mom, taking people away and coming back with only their clothes. I would like to ask you if you recall if these people were the same people who were evacuated from Phnom Penh.
Response: I don't know. I only saw the boat and people being loaded onto it, and when they upon returning, there were only clothes which were then distributed to us and other people. I did not know where these people could have been taken to. In the mornings, I would also see people walking on the other side of the river bank, and people would be heard saying to one another on the other side of the river bank about the fate of those people.
Thank you. Now I would like to come to a new topic. Madam Mom, have you ever met any of the senior leaders before the beginning of Democratic Cambodia?
Response: No, I never saw them, but on an evening I was forced to watch a movie at Tuol Krosang. It was about 30 kilometers from our location, and at that movie show I was told about Pol Pot. I heard about Pol Pot, and then I learned of this individual who I saw at Lycée Sisawat, who was a Lhot Saw. I said, look, he was a Lhot Saw. And by saying so, I was asked by people at the district office whether I knew this person. I was rather shy and reserved to report, to say more on this. I just said that I used to study with Lhot Saw before.
Thank you. And at Lycée Sisawat, did you ever meet any of the accused, Ieng Sari, Nunchia, or Khieu Samphan?
Response: At Lycée Sisawat, I did not study in the same class with Mr. Ieng Sari. Indeed, he studied in different class at the same school. Lhot Saw did not study in the same class as mine. He studied at the same school. But you know, in the old days, the school, there were not many students in each school, so we could know one another by seeing them coming to schools every day. And Lhot Saw's wife was Khieu Ponnari, and Ieng Sari, who is the husband of Ieng Thiret, I studied with Ieng Thirit's elder sibling, Ieng Thirat.
Thank you, Madam Mom. I have no further questions for you, and thank you very much for coming and answering all our questions.
The President, thank you, Counsel. We would like now to hand over to the prosecution to put questions to the civil party.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good morning. Good morning to you, all distinguished members of the bench, all parties, and all those attending this morning's hearing. Good morning to you, Madame Civil Party. I wish to thank you for being here. I wish to thank you for providing us clarifications on issues that we are concerned with, notably the evacuation of Phnom Penh that occurred many years ago. I want to thank you for being as specific and patient as you have demonstrated to be, and thank you for answering questions I have for you that relate to some of the matters you have already raised thus far. Now, just now you stated that you studied at Sisawat Lycée around the same time as Ieng Thirit, Ieng Sary, among others, at the time. Did you know whether Solotsar and Ieng Sary played a particular role at the Sisawat Lycée School?
Response. At that time, I did not know whether these people were holding any functions. We were treating one another as students at the school. Ieng Thirat were studying at a normal school, indeed not at Sisawat, and I studied with that person at the primary school. At Lycée Sisawat, we went to the same school, although we attended different classes. Ieng Sary and Solotsar were each at different classes, and I was in another classes, and I knew him very well. I knew Solotsar very well.
Est-ce que vous saviez que
Do you know what kind of political ideas or opinions Solotsar held at the time?
Response. I don't know. I don't know what kind of political opinion he held at that time. I've paid only attention to study. And I did not even know who Pol Pot was. I only learned about this when I went to watch the movie, the place where Pol Pot's name was pronounced, and I saw Pol Pot was actually Solotsar.
Merci, merci.
Thank you. Pardon me. I would just want to point out that there is a slight lag between the time that you are providing your answer in Khmer to provide sufficient time for the interpretation of your words. So if I may, I would ask you to observe a slight pause after your responses. Now, Madame, you stated that you were a French teacher in Kampot before you were assigned to Phnom Penh. And you stated that your husband Ok Un had worked at several trades and professions. Can you please tell us what he did prior to the fall of 1975? Prior to the fall of Phnom Penh in 1975?
Response. Are you asking me about my husband's professions?
Oui, c'est bien ça.
Yes, exactly. Can you tell us what he did, what positions he held, what professions he practiced before the Khmer Rouge took over Phnom Penh in 1975?
Response. At the beginning, he worked for a company collecting rice. Later on, he worked at Sok Tropic. He was engaged in planting sweet corns with the Japanese business people, and then he was the general director at a Don Tiêu location in Battambang, and at the same time was teaching at agricultural school of Chomka Dong. So he worked and taught at Prek Liep School, just the school located on the other side of the river bank from Phnom Penh.
Tout à l'heure,
Just now you made mention of the Khmer Rouge's accusations that your family belonged to the feudal class. From 1975 to 1979, during the time of democratic Kampuchea, was your family accused of belonging to other social classes other than the feudal class?
Response. At the beginning, some of the villagers were angry with him. They said that the new people, the 17th of April people, came to steal their food because they had never experienced such food shortages. They accused us as people belonging to the feudalist class. And indeed, when my son, who tended the cows and later on was trampled by a cow, that incident led to the Khmer Rouge soldier accused me of improperly raise my son and children because they said that I could not even raise him well to tend the cows.
merci. J'en viens.
Thank you. Let us return to the day of April 17th, 1975, and situate us in the scenario when Phnom Penh was taken over by the Khmer Rouge. How did your neighbors, how did the people living in your neighborhood react when the Khmer Rouge entered Phnom Penh?
Response. At first, everyone thought that the war was over because we saw white flags being waved and we already presumed that there was no longer conflicts. And we saw Khmer Rouge soldiers then coming to our home, threatening us, asking us to leave our home without bringing any belongings with us, and I could not manage to open my safe. My glasses were taken off and removed and discarded. So I learned from that moment that there was no peace anymore.
Very well. Now, before the Khmer Rouge entered your home and pointed a gun at you and forced you to open the safe, what was your reaction over the Khmer Rouge victory? Did you become fearful given your social status? Or did you experience happiness over the end of the war?
Response: I had no time to think much because the Khmer Rouge pointed a gun, pressed it on my right shoulder, and threatened me to leave my home. Otherwise, I would be, or bombs would be dropped on us. As I indicated, I was trying to unlock my safe by inserting some combinations, but I was about midway. Then the Khmer Rouge soldier came and pointed the gun at me, and I thought to myself, I knew that worst thing would happen, and it was true that the Khmer Rouge told me to leave the home immediately. I told my children to bring some foodstuff with us, but the Khmer Rouge soldier did not allow us to do so. Nonetheless, since I have a lot of children, a few of my children could manage to grab some foodstuff with them while living, so they could place them on the Volkswagen car, and we were not allowed to take the car. Only my husband and my youngest daughter were allowed to be in that car alone, and they had to go to different direction from ours.
Thank you. When the Khmer Rouge held you at gunpoint and they were yelling, how did your children react in the immediate wake of the Khmer Rouge threats?
Response: my children were all crying. They were crying seeing me kneeling down next to the safe while being held at gunpoint by the Khmer Rouge soldier. And the soldier kept saying that I shouldn't have been careful with paying attention to myself rather than helping the revolution. And I think that happened because I was seen wearing glasses. And my children were all crying out loud, but I told them to calm down and be ready to leave upon order. And many of my children could take some foodstuff with them. And later on, we were chased away.
Thank you. Let us return to the episode of your glasses being broken. As you were very nearsighted, didn't this disable you during the time that you were engaged in forced labor under the Khmer Rouge because you could not see clearly?
Response. I did not possess any glasses during the entire period of the Khmer Rouge, and I had a lot of problems seeing things. At Chunlia Island, I found it difficult to walk even from the living room to the kitchen, and I had to use my hand to feel the things near me as my eyes because of the absence of the glasses.
Merci.
Thank you. The Khmer Rouge who entered your home said that you had to leave for 3 days because American bombing was about to begin. Were you persuaded by the reason given to you to evacuate the city because the city was under threat of American bombardments, or did you believe that there were other reasons behind the evacuation?
Response. When we were being evacuated, we heard that we would leave the city for 3 days, and they would be allowed to return after 3 days, and we were terrified. And I thought at that time that I could never come back home when we left. That's why I tried my best to unlock the safe to take some belongings, but I couldn't. I was not persuaded that such bombs would begin anytime soon, because I already believed that the war was over and we would be in peace. And when the Khmer Rouge came, I knew that it would not be in peace, but I was not persuaded that there would be bombs being dropped anyway.
Est-ce que dans le même...
Did you ask yourself if you had to leave because of American bombings and why you were being held at gunpoint?
Response. I was told not to wait, and I had to leave quickly because the Americans would bomb very soon. We had to leave only for 3 days. We shouldn't bring with us anything at all, as the Khmer Rouge told, because for 3 days we would be allowed to come back. However, my adult children could grab some foodstuff so that they could eat while walking. And again, I was not convinced that there would be bombs being dropped in Phnom Penh. However, a few days before that, I heard that some bombs were dropped to the eastern bank of the river, and for that reason my husband asked me to ensure that a trench was built so that or bunker was built so that we could take refuge.
Merci.
Thank you. You stated that you were terrorized. Did you have the impression that you were free to leave the city based on the order given to you to leave Phnom Penh? Or did you feel constrained?
Response. Looking at the gesture of the Khmer Rouge soldiers who forced us to leave the city, we could feel that we were constrained indeed, and I believe that we could never be returned in 3 days. And they kept threatening us, forcing us to leave, and I was held at gunpoint because by doing so, they believe I could be moved quickly. And again, I did not believe that I would be returned in 3 days.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Therefore, somebody entered your home. Did the Khmer Rouge use any other means to force citizens of Phnom Penh to evacuate? Did they use messages being broadcast over loudspeakers or other equipment?
Response. No, they didn't use any other means to evacuate the people. And on the 17th of April 1975, people in the city believed that we were in peace already. But upon leaving our home, we noted that the streets of Phnom Penh were crowded with the Khmer Rouge soldiers already. The President, Council Kanawas, you may proceed.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors, and good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom. I hesitate to interrupt, especially given the nature of the testimony. However, this particular prosecutor has been cautioned time and again not to lead the witness. His very last question, he asks a question, an open-ended question, and then he feeds a potential answer. My apologies. Too much coffee. Let me rephrase, Mr. President. My apologies for speaking so quickly. I hesitate to object in light of the testimony in deference to this particular witness who has obviously suffered tremendously during that period. The prosecutor, this one in particular, has a habit of asking an open-ended question, and then he follows up with some leading possibilities, such as the one that he just noted. I would respectfully request that he simply elicit information without giving a smorgasbord of options for the witness to choose. We want to hear from this witness's recollection. She's a very good witness. Her recollection is excellent. There's no need to lead the witness. Thank you very much. And hopefully I won't interrupt again.
Merci. Je vais...
Very well. I will continue with another line of questioning, Mr. President. Turning to you, Madame Civil Party. You did not discuss the orders being given by the Khmer Rouge, but when you left your home, when you left your neighborhood, and when you left Phnom Penh, did you, at any point in time, notice any people or citizens talk about the Khmer Rouge orders and talk about the possibility of not abiding by those orders? Did you ever witness any of this?
Response. On the day we were leaving, no one were brave enough to ask any questions Everyone was very sad. We were crying because we felt sorry for the losses of our properties and belongings. And we were constantly held at gunpoint. So people had to walk very fast and they had to keep moving.
Merci. Je voudrais
Thank you. I wish to return to an issue that you yourself raised and seek clarification over a statement that you made previously. It relates to vehicles. How many vehicles were parked at your residence on the 17th of April?
Response: there were 3 vehicles. Land Rover belonging to the company and our own car, Volkswagen, and we also bought a new car from the member of the U.S. Embassy. So altogether we had 3 vehicles parking at our home when the Khmer Rouge came.
Et parmi ces véhicules, est-ce que vous avez
And among those vehicles, did you have the choice to take the vehicle of your preference?
Response: no, we were allowed to only leave the city with that small car, the Volkswagen, carrying only our youngest daughter and my husband. The other vehicles were not allowed to be taken by us, and they asked us for the keys so that they could perhaps use the cars.
Est-ce que vous avez
Did you attempt to understand why you were forced to hand over the keys to the 2 other vehicles, even if you were supposedly only supposed to leave for 3 days and return to your home afterwards?
Response: we were threatened to hand over the keys of these 2 vehicles. We were terrified by that. And since we were held at gunpoint, my husband and I could not resist such threat.
Merci. Donc vous
Thank you. Therefore, you left on foot with 10 children. Your husband was in the Volkswagen with 1 child. How did you reunite during your journey?
The President, Council, your mic, witness, your mic was not activated when you spoke, so your message was not conveyed. Please wait a moment until you see the red light being activated on the console before you proceed to respond to the question. And secondly, could you please listen to the question in Khmer first before you respond to the question. If you listen to the French channel, then you may miss the pause that you should observe.
voulez-vous que je repose la question?
Madame Civil Party, do you wish that I repeat my question? Or allow me to reformulate. How did you reunite with your husband, who was traveling in the Volkswagen along with your youngest child, while you were driven out of your home and forced to leave on foot with your 10 other children?
Response. When leaving our home, I was walking on foot with my 10 children, one of whom had passed out. We were very worried that we would not be able to reunite with my husband and the youngest daughter. By the time we reached Monivong Bridge, it was 3 p.m. We left home at 9 a.m., but we got there at 3 p.m., where we reunited with my husband and the youngest daughter.
Est-ce que vous pourriez
Could you describe the journey to the Monivong Bridge? Apparently it took a great deal of time. Is that because the roadways were packed with people, or were there other reasons why it took quite so long?
Yes, exactly. The road was packed with people. And in addition, one of my children got SINCOR, so we had to stay behind. It took us approximately an hour. We actually asked the Khmer Rouge to allow us to stay behind to massage my children, and actually they witnessed that by themselves. That's why they allow us to stay behind for an hour or so. And then when we got to the end of Monivong Bridge, it was approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was at that time when I saw my husband driving in his Volkswagen, and we met him there.
Merci.
Thank you. This was April, a very hot month, normally speaking, in Cambodia. Was it very hot on that day for you and on the following days?
Yes, it was. The day was very hot, and in addition, we were very terrified, and we were very worried about our children as well, because we were afraid that our children would be separated. So we were constantly terrified.
Merci.
Thank you. Since a great many people had to be evacuated and it was extremely hot, did the Khmer Rouge provide those who did not have any kind of transport with vehicles like buses or taxis that they requisitioned to assist the population in leaving Phnom Penh?
No, not at all. They had no mercy on the people at all. And if people protracted or they resisted moving along fast enough, they would run the risk of being shot. So we did not receive any proper treatment, let alone the bus to carry us out of the town. We had to march on foot out of the town.
Yes.
And by the same token, did the Khmer Rouge plan the distribution of water to the pedestrians or food and medicines for those who needed it? Or did they guide people towards housing or accommodation along the road?
Absolutely none. Absolutely none. There was nothing at all. Those who, just stop walking, they would be threatened of being shot. So we had to move very quickly as possible. And they never care who was who. Even if they were patient, they were still having IV on their hands, but then they did not care about those patients at all. They treated us inhumanely. They treated us as if we were animals or non-Cambodian.
Parmi les personnes
And among the vulnerable people who had to take to the road, you said there was no distinction between the different people, the elderly, pregnant women, the sick. Did you see people along the road who had given up, who just stopped walking, who couldn't take it any longer and who stopped right there? Did you see people in that kind of predicament?
No one there resist or stop moving. So long as they stop, they would be threatened, and if the person there protest, they would be shot. For example, one of the lady miscarried along the way, and she actually stepped on something, and then she fell down, and then she miscarried along the way, and everyone were turning their eyes on her, saying that, well, she had that problem. So everyone at that time had to do everything for their life, for their own life, and nobody was taking care of anybody else.
Merci.
Thank you. Do you know if families were separated during the evacuation? Do you have examples you could quote of people you knew who were actually separated during the evacuation?
I don't think I understand your question. Could you please repeat your question? I don't quite catch it.
Oui, je voulais savoir.
Yes, I wanted to know if on the 17th of April evacuation and on the following days, were families separated and broken up? Now, I'm not talking about your family, but other families that you might have encountered on the journey.
When we were being evacuated, I also overheard from other people among the crowds that they had separated from their siblings or family members, but nobody would dare stop and look for the separated relatives. They had to continue marching. But as for my family, the 10 children stay with me when we were marching out of the city.
Concernant votre...
What about your own family? Did you ever get any news subsequently of your father-in-law who went into the street on that first morning and was then taken away by the Khmer Rouge? Did you ever hear what happened to him?
I did not hear anything from him anymore. He simply disappeared, and I asked people who came from his hometown. They did not know, so I did not know where he disappeared. I did not know about his fate, but I assumed that he must have died. If not, then he would have come to look for us. But the thing is that we did not know where he was killed or where he died.
Merci.
Thank you. Just now you referred to the 17th of April people. You used that term. When was the first time you heard the term? By opposition to base people. Was it at the evacuation time, or was it at a later date that you came across the term?
I heard people talk about the 17th April when I left Prey Samrong and I arrived in Prey Koi. I met with the base people, and they told new people who came in that the 17 April people came to take away their ration or so, food ration. So they did not call us new people at that time. They called us 17 April people. And I told them that actually I did not want to come. I did not want to come and stay here. I did not intend to take anything away from you. I was forced to come here. But other people who understood differently, they would tell different story. But to them, they still had the perception that the 17 April people came to take their belongings or their food ration.
Merci. Je voudrais
Thank you. Let's come back to a question that you were asked a little while ago, to which you did not fully reply. Now, along the road and at your destination, Samrong or Prakoi, people wanted to know what your social context was, what your social position was. How did you manage to not reveal to the Khmer Rouge what your background was, and what was it that made you think that it was best not to tell them about your background and your profession?
I understood the situation at that time that the Khmer Rouge did not like intellectuals. That idea came to my mind, so that's why I had to pretend to be somebody ignorant.
Merci.
Thank you. You went from Samrong, where you stayed for a few days, to Prakoi. Who told you you had to leave? And did you have any choice in whether or not you left for Prakoi?
I had to comply with the order. My children were ordered to build a road in Tulkrasang. 5 of them went to this work site. And my 7th daughter were ordered to clear wheat and collect the wheat to make a roof thatch. And the other child was ordered to do other work, and the other son was ordered to Chuklia Pagoda, and the other one was ordered to work in a different work site. As for my husband, he was ordered to hurt animals near Tun mountain, some 7 kilometers away from Pretkoi. And I asked them for permission to move to Pretkoi so that I could be close to my husband.
Et quand vous êtes...
And when you went to Pretkoi, were you taken there by Khmer Rouge, or did you just go on your own?
Nobody accompanied me. I had to ask people along the way, asking them where Pretkoi was. So I eventually arrived in a commune office. Then I asked the commune chief over there, and I eventually ended up in one of the brick house. And then the next morning, one person came to ask me whether or not I slept well that night. So that the person appears wondering why I could sleep well that night, because there were the soul of dead people over there who kept haunting people who stay overnight over there, because many people had been killed.
Merci.
Thank you. When you were in Pretkoi, were there other 17th of April people who were also in the same commune?
Nearby the house where I stayed, there were no 17 April people. There were base people who are very kind to me. They try to give something for me to eat as well. And as for my husband, before he left for Thun Mun mountain to hurt animals, he had worked with the commune chief as well for some 2 weeks before he was ordered to hurt animals in the mountain areas.
Merci.
Thank you. When you were in the Sang district in the Pretkoi commune, did you go to commune meetings or lifestyle meetings?
Yes, I did attend the meeting. I was convened to the meeting by the commune chief. They push us to work harder. The elderly people were ordered to shell corn or cotton. And the commune chief, by the name of Sarun, had sympathy on my family. He was not that harsh on my family. He did not coerce us that much. But later on, there was the head of militia who came to tell me that I had to go to Brejtruk, and they escorted me to that place at around 10 or 11 o'clock at night. They took me on the boat, and there I was with other people as well, and they used the boat paddle to count the number of passengers. They took us to Brejchenlia.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to go into all of the details of what happened to you after that particular point in time, but I did want to know is that after these meetings that you had in Preco, were you told about Angkar and what Angkar's policies were for the country?
They only told us to work harder. We had to work harder. We must not be lazy. And we had nothing much to eat. We were given only a few ladle of watery gruels. And we also had some skin problems as well as a result of eating the unhygiene food. And then they kept blaming on us that we had never endured life in the countryside. We had a good life in the city, so they kept mocking at us all the time. So I found my skin had a lot of problems, and then they kept mocking at me that I had that skin problem simply because I contracted communicable disease from my husband, because my husband lived in the city and he had some affairs with many other ladies in town. That's why he transmitted such a disease to me. So these were all of the degrading statement and mocking against me.
Et au quotidien, vous étiez...
Thank you. So on a day-to-day basis, you were part of this 17th of April group. Now, were you treated in a different way by comparison to the base people in terms of your nutrition, the clothing that you had to wear, the workload, or the things you were not allowed to say?
Some base people did not have any problem with the new people. They were kind, and they offer the new people some foods to eat as well. But some illiterate and base people had a very negative perception against the new people. They thought that the new people would go there and take the food ration or any advantage of them. So they had the feeling of hatred against the new people.
Merci, je n'ai plus que 3 ou 4 questions.
Thank you. I only have a handful of further questions. About your husband, at any given point under the Khmer Rouge regime and before he was arrested was his previous position as the director of an enterprise discovered by the Khmer Rouge.
I do not know whether or not the Khmer Rouge knew it. That is beyond my knowledge. I did not know whether the Khmer Rouge had found out the background of my husband. But at that time, I did not say anything about the career of my husband. And when he was herding animals, normally along with other people as well. But sometimes my husband was left behind at the dining hall to prepare food because they understood that my husband was someone from the city and he could not herd animal properly. So he at times was asked to stay at the kitchen or dining hall where he could prepare food. But at that time I dare not say anything about the profession of my husband.
J'aurais une question.
Now, one very precise question about what you said in one of the documents that we have available to us, and perhaps, Mr. President, this could be put before the civil party. It's document D22/11/4. And if page 7 in Khmer could be put up on the screen, I'll read out the ERNs. In Khmer it's 00198403. In English, page 4 of document D22/11/4 on ERN 00242251, and in French, page 5, 00333881. This is an extract that I want to read out and then ask a very precise question about.
The President, you may proceed. Court officer is instructed to obtain the hard copy document from the prosecutor and hand it over to the civil party.
Merci. Alors, je vais lire un extrait et vous comprendrez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to read out an excerpt, and then you will understand when I ask the question precisely why I chose that excerpt. But what you said in this document, Madam, is that 2 weeks after your husband had been arrested, I and my second daughter, Moni Bopa, my youngest daughter, Bunni, and I were ferried to Koksak Chunlea, a prison without wall, where only troops' wives and new people or 17th April people lived. Madam Civil Party, I have 2 questions. When you say that on the island there were only troops' wives, are you talking about the wives of soldiers of the Khmer Republic?
Response: yes. I am referring this to the wives of these former Khmer Republic's officials. So I refer to the wives of the soldiers here, the soldiers of the Khmer Republic.
Merci.
Thank you very much. were those wives of Khmer Republic soldiers able to tell you what had happened to their husbands?
Response. At Ksachulia Island, the people who survived were not allowed to communicate, or they had no time to talk to one another, because early in the mornings they would then leave the place for work, only to return when the night fell. On one evening, a woman stole a kind of fruit. Then she was executed by being hit with a pole and plunged into a pit. And I thought to myself, my day would come soon as well. My turn would come soon.
Merci. Et dernier...
Thank you. And a last question, and I'm sorry to come back to this obviously very difficult episode. You talked about the death of 6 of your children after the fall of the Khmer Rouge. Were you able to discover, either through your other children or through other people, what precisely had happened to them and the circumstances in which they died?
Response. As to the daughter who was sent to Tul Krasang, on one occasion I was sent to a location on the road to Takao, and I was placed on a vehicle and to see to see whether my daughter was working there. I did not see her anyway, but after Phnom Penh fell, my children who survived the regime ran to me at Ksachulia Island, but only 5 went to see me. The rest did not return, and I learned that these people, my children, had already been killed. I was told that people who were executed at Koh could have been raped before they were executed. I was very saddened upon hearing such tragic information from the people. I believe that my daughters would also end up being raped before executed as well there. And my youngest daughter could manage to come and reunite with the family, but I still have not heard anything at all from the rest of the 6 children. Six daughters, rather 5 daughters died, 1 son disappeared and perhaps died because they never came to see me. So I can conclude that 5 daughters and 1 son of mine perished during the Khmer Rouge.
Merci.
Thank you. I have no more questions to you, Madam Civil Party, and I'm deeply grateful to you for having taken the time to go back into these memories, and I wish you a good break over lunch. I believe it's the time to come to a halt now, Mr. President.
The President, Counsel for the Civil Party, you may proceed first before Counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to remind Defense Counsel to use the correct terminology, as he was referring to Madame Mom Som-eun earlier on as witness, but she's here today to testify as civil party. Thank you.
The President, thank you, Counsel. It is now appropriate time for lunch adjournment. The Chamber will adjourn until 1:30 p.m. Court officer is now instructed to assist Madam Civil Party during the lunch adjournment and have her return to the courtroom when the next session resumes by 1:30 p.m. Counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea, Mr. Jasper Pao, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our client, Nuon Chea, would like to follow this afternoon's proceedings from his holding cell, as he is suffering from back pain and a general lack of concentration, and we have already submitted the waiver.
The President, the Chamber notes the request of Mr. Nuon Chea through his counsel, in which he asks that he be allowed to observe the proceedings from his holding cell for the remainder of the day due to his health concerns, which he indicated that he cannot remain seated for a long period of time in the courtroom. Counsel has already made it clear that the waiver, given some print or signed by Mr. Nuon Chea, would be submitted to the Chamber in due course. In light of that, the Chamber therefore grants such a request, and that Mr. Nuon Chea is now allowed to observe the proceedings from his holding cell for the remainder of the day, and he has expressly waived his right to participate directly in the courtroom. The Chamber would like counsels for Mr. Nuon Chea to produce the waiver to the Chamber immediately, and the AV unit is now instructed to ensure that the AV equipment is well connected to the holding cell so that Mr. Nuon Chea can observe the proceedings from there. Security personnel are now instructed to bring Mr. Kyew Sampon and Nuon Chea to their respective holding cell and have Mr. Kyew Sampon returned to the courtroom when the next session resumes by 1:30 p.m. The court is adjourned.
សូមក្រោកឈរ